Mr. Harbour is in high demand as a speaker. He's regularly interviewed and quoted in media publications, television, radio, internet. And we're very, very fortunate to have him here with us today. He will share some of his experiences and impart some of his wisdom. So please help me welcome our distinguished guest, Mr. Harbour.
But I paid my own way here. I paid my way grade school, I made my way here to high school, and it was a little less money than it is today, probably. But it was hard to do because you had to work all summer and try to make money and be able to do that. But I didn't want to leave here. I didn't want to leave my friends. And even though my father could afford it, he made me do it because he knew that if I did it, I would value my time and my experience here all the more. And I would really get something out of it because after all, I was paying for it. So, as Ken mentioned, that was what really drove me to try and find a decent job during the summer to make a few dollars so that I could afford to come to school here. It just so happened that I had a good friend of mine that I went to school with here. He said, you know, I was delivering papers and doing all kinds of odd jobs. He said, you know, we're not 16 yet, but there's a great job you can take that you can make a lot of money with. So I said, well, what is that? And he said, well, you carry golf bags, these golf courses. And I didn't even know what golf was, much less care about it, but I said, okay, I'll go and I'll find out what it's all about. Well, that was really neat because you're outside, you're out in the sun, it's nice fresh weather thing, and you carry these bags, and I thought, well, I can make good money doing this in the first couple of weeks. But then I started to think about it as I went out more and more and said, this isn't a bad place to hang out because there's some pretty successful people here, some good influences. There was a lot of money to be made, but I figured out, if you did something a little extra, you could probably enhance what money you made. So I went back and I studied and made sure that I knew what the art was at every ring, at every position, anywhere in that golf course. So somebody asked me, I had full command of that. I went and learned the game myself, to figure out what it was that made one better or worse than another. How did you learn to putt? How did you learn to swing? All those things that I went out and figured out. So that when I was out there and somebody said, well, what do you think I should hit? Is it 5 iron or 6 iron? I know right away. Get used to that player and know what their specific idiosyncrasies were so that I could add more value and be better for them than anybody else that they would get. Because we were just assigned randomly. Pretty soon people started asking me, they constantly, is he available? Can I do that? And I felt really honored by that because they felt like maybe they were getting something more. I was even kidded by some of the other guys because the ones that asked me the most were the women because we'd get out there and I would just hand them the ball over my head. They didn't even ask me. But I knew how to take care of them really well, and that paid off for me, and I was able to make a lot more money than otherwise. Ultimately, I got promoted, and as Ken said, I had the opportunity to go to Brown Golf Club where I live, and there was a unique situation because they had a rule back then, for those of you that are familiar with golf at all, most people ride cars today, which doesn't make much of a sport. But back in those days, if you remember, you couldn't ride a car unless you were disabled. You had to walk. So it was my first experience with job security because we had 450 kids. And when they came out, I was guaranteed that they were going to work that day and make some money because they had to be taken. So very few people, most of the people that rode cars were all the ex-jocks that belonged there, the ex-Lions players and other things and all that, because their knees were shot and they couldn't even walk that home. But it was a great experience because I learned what it meant to take care of people, add more value. And so it took the basic education, this foundation that I was learning here, and enhanced it to where you thought if you really took what was given to you, you added value to that. Not only was that customer going to get more from you, but they would ask more for your service and potentially pay you more. So it's a great job. And I made enough to go to school here and then some. So it was a great, great opportunity. The other benefit of that was that I got to play golf. I love to play golf, and I got decent at it. We had a really good team here back in the 70s. I don't know if there is even a team today. I don't know. Is there good? We won a lot of tournaments back then. I was fortunate enough to win the state championship in golf when I represented Toronto my senior year. Qualified for the U.S. Amateur. Those were all incredible experiences that I never would have had otherwise. But it wasn't about the game. That was only a foundation or a springboard for me because I wanted to use it to meet more people that were influential and successful and that I could do something. I was lucky that it coincided with the time that my father was actually leaving Christ and he started his own business. It was a very unique situation because those of you that may remember or not, government in Washington and pleaded for loan guarantees. Now, it wasn't money like the government gave to GM Chrysler a couple years ago. It's actually just a loan guarantee. So they would go to their banks and they would ask for money. You know, it was kind of like co-signing your kid's loan or something like that. So if Chrysler didn't have the ability to pay those loans, the government would take care of it. So it gave the banks the confidence to loan to Chrysler. So there's a group of people that are representing Chrysler in Washington. My father was one of them representing the manufacturing team at Chrysler. We didn't have the good fortune of spending the last 10 years before that working in Japan. And Japan in the 70s was really making inroads in the industry in this country. And he was able to understand and learn a lot. He brought that in his testimony in Washington. He said, we've learned a lot from our Japanese partners, and we're going to bring that learning to what we're doing here at Chrysler. We're going to be a much bigger, better, more competitive company. They got loan guarantees and went back to Detroit. But then the CEO of Chrysler, I hope I'm sure you might have heard of him. He said, well, it was a nice speech, Mr. Harbour, but we're not going to do any of that stuff. The Japanese don't know how to make anything but pots and pans and radios. Speech back then. So the rest is history. You know what the Japanese did in terms of gaining huge market share in the United States. But he took that learning, and I hope said they're going to do that. So he said, oh, by the way, I have to get rid of half my salary staff, so they let my father go with a year's severance. He came home, and we have a very, very large table with 10 people around it. He announced to us that age 52 that he had no job anymore. A little early for him to retire then. So, but it's taken what he learned in that experience and opened up his own firm. The very next day, the first call we got from the Department of Commerce, the Department of Transportation, and the CIA. The CIA wanted to know, well, why? If the Japanese are getting really good, they could be a military propaganda and go to war with us like they did back in World War II. To which my father said, no, they're not interested in that, but they are interested in winning the war, the economic war, and particularly in the war industry. And of course, you know what's happened since then. They've taken about 40% of the market share in this industry. And back in that day, Chrysler and GM had 95% of the market in this country. So he took what he learned, and he said, I can start a business and teach people this. And that's what he did. But the government was the first ones that hired us and said, we want to understand this whole situation. So we did some competitive studies. We compared Japanese manufacturing to manufacturing all around the world. Because it was a government study, and the Japanese were trying to raise their import limits in the U.S., we had carte blanche with visiting every plant and understanding what was going on in Twitter, all those things. It was an incredible experience for somebody my age. But from that, we issued this report that we called Harbour, and we still do that today. So we look at and examine every plant that makes cars and trucks around the world, in Asia, North America, South America, and Europe. But what I did early on was said, I'm not going to just sit in an office and collect data on all these plants and do a comparison every year. I want to visit them and understand what they do. So we had the privilege, excuse me, the same word here this morning, to see all those plants. I had the ability to see almost every one of those plants in the world, at least once, many of them multiple times, particularly ones in North America. What you find out is that I could give you 10 factories and make cars and trucks and give you all the same equipment, all the same automation, all the same processes, you name it, and they have 10 different results. Because it doesn't have anything to do with the automation of the equipment. It has everything to do with the leadership team that's in there. And that's really, again, what was stated in that video and what we heard this morning. It was the way it was managed. And that there wasn't anything magical about the way the Japanese and the Koreans or any other country made cars and trucks. What it was all about was the way they managed the plants and the way they led people. What we really learned about the best plants in the world was they had a system that allowed everyone to become part of the process. As opposed to the early days in the U.S. where you had these strong managers that gave direction, and sometimes they were right and more often they were wrong. And they didn't treat people well. And what happened in the best plants is that they got everybody involved and got their ideas, got their cooperation, and everybody contributed every day to make improvements. And what happened was you had a much happier, more productive workforce. And there's a lot more that I can go into there. But it's interesting because I I've talked to some of the groups I've talked to in the past, include labor unions and people like that. And I've often thought about this, why do unions exist in this country or any other country? Only for one reason: management created them. They put people in unsafe conditions, didn't respect them, didn't ask them for ideas, and they didn't have any identity with the company that they worked for. The union gave them that respect, gave them that identity, and defended them when people treated them bad. Management created unions. So, but it all goes back to this whole concept of leadership, how we treat people, and we'll be successful if we bring in the best people, treat them with respect, and get their ideas and become involved. One thing that I've learned since those of you that read the paper and listen to the media in recent months, they've all talked about there having a resurgence of manufacturing in America. And it's interesting because there's a lot of those jobs, the following out, and the last of those jobs have gone away. It's not because we weren't, that you couldn't manufacture in this country. It's not because of cheap labor or anything like that. It's from some management that was really too lazy and not willing to really work hard to make sure they could succeed here. And it was easier to outsource. We've had the privilege of working for a number of companies. One I would mention is a company called Harbour. You probably heard of that time. They were going to close the plant a couple of years ago in Pennsylvania and ship it all to Mexico. And who would buy a Harbour built in Mexico was my first question. But by working, completely changing the union agreement there, completely changing the way that they work in that plant's now turned around. They've saved not only the 2,000 jobs in their plant, but the 10,000 jobs in that plant that support our police, right down to the 7-Eleven that have been talking on their way into work in the morning. Those are the kind of things that it doesn't matter what the money is. Those are the kind of situations where you go home and you feel really good because you not only made a difference in saving a company or saving a plant, but saving people's jobs and their livelihood in communities that, in many cases, like your Pennsylvania, rely solely on that plant. About 8 out of every 10 people in that city are somehow related to or supporting Harley-Davidson. They're the supplier, work in the grocery store, or they actually work in the plant itself. So when you really think about all that, and you're able to make that kind of change, it's a very, very gratifying thing. It's much bigger than any kind of dollars that have been given to engagement. It's a big thing. So, I thought about this, if I was in your chair and you're trying to figure out, well, where am I going? What should I study? What should I do? What would I tell you? I'm no smarter than all the rest of them. How did I get where I am right now? Maybe a lot of prayers, some good fortune and timing and things like that. But when I look back at what worked and what didn't work, I want to share a couple of those things with you. Number one is hard work will never be a way around that. You have to do it no matter what. It's critical. But one of the things that I learned through that experience, not only in golf club but beyond that, was that what you get in a school like this is only a foundation. It's only half what's really going to determine whether you make a difference or not. And it's what I call just book intelligence. Take classes in math, take classes in English, and all those. And that's critically important, but it's really only half of what we'll do. And I brought a book that I recommend if you get a chance to just take a look at. And it's called Emotional Intelligence. And not here was a book I've never met the author, but it was a book that I read 20 years ago that made a huge difference to me. Because it talked about the other half of what makes you successful out in the world. And not only is it critical to have all of those learnings that you have in this particular tool, but it was that other part. It was your ability to communicate with people, the ability to have empathy and understanding and listening. It's all more about your personality. These aren't things that are necessarily just important. They're things that you sincerely can learn. So think, for example, I'll give you 3 examples of presidents. John Kennedy, Bill Clinton, and Ronald Reagan. Now forget whether they're Democrats or Republicans. What's some of the things that were common denominators among those 3? They were all very intelligent men. John Kennedy went to Harvard. Ronald Reagan was originally an actor, but he was an incredibly smart guy. Bill Clinton, I think, also went to Harvard. But they have a character and a personality in a way to, whether you agree with them or not, sell you on their ideas. They were very convincing, which made them very successful when they campaigned for office, because they were able to understand and listen to what the issues were, and then translate them into the action that they thought would make a difference. So it was really that other half that I call EQ, that emotional intelligence part of it, that I think makes a huge difference. In our business, I've hired engineers, I've had finance people that came in that had unbelievable grades from some very high-level schools, 4.0, Michigan and other East Coast schools and that. But they were never really successful in our organization because it didn't matter what great ideas they had, they couldn't communicate them. They couldn't sell them to the client. They couldn't even sell them to me. So it made a huge difference because they only had half of that equation. So if you want to go look at that way, it's just a starter to understand what the concept is. But I think it's the most critical part of rounding out your total education. What do employers like us look for? People that come in the door, we're certainly looking for that, that core foundation of education. But one of the things that's been the most disappointing to me over the years has been how weak many students are in really some of the core attributes like writing and both written and oral communication. The inability, like I said, to stand up in front of a room and sell your ideas, or even in a one-on-one with a client, or the ability to really write. And much of it has to do with the technology that we introduce into our lives every day. But it's amazing to me how poorly some people write that had come into our office with master's degrees and all that. And for example, engineering curriculums that don't even command that a student take a speech class or a class in business communication or something like that. It's astounding me. I mean, I'm viewed as kind of the Attila on the written word of editing in our office because it's so critical to me. And when I thought about that coming into the city, I was like, that is one of the things that I learned in the school. It's one of the things back when I was here, I still had nuns. And I still probably have swollen knuckles from the, English grammar is a big deal here. And, and the reason that I mention that is because what happens is that potential employers or clients, customers, when they read something that you've written that is not well written, it's like even basic spelling and punctuation errors, you lose all your credibility right there. Your chance of getting that job, impressing them, or convincing them that you really know your stuff was right out the window. So those kind of basics are really, really critically important. I know that when I think back to my experience here, I had a teacher named Mrs. Johnson for calculus, and she since went on for other ways fantastic teacher. And yeah, she was a good calculus teacher, but when I think about what I got from her, it was more the other part. She was an incredibly good communicator. She was unbelievably empathetic. She would give all the time that she had, no matter what it was, Saturday, Sunday, evenings, or whatever, if you needed help from her. But it always turned into kind of a life lesson. It was more than just math. And so with teachers like that, I really learned a lot more and was able to take what she modeled and use it in my day-to-day life. And I'm forever indebted to her for that. I had a speech teacher that was incredible in the school. I remember he had a bucket, a basket of different items, everything from a toilet roll, paper rolls, to a comb, to all these little items. And he put it out in the hallway, and you had to go out and pick an item blindfolded from that basket. And then you had 2 minutes to think about what you were going to say about it and get them into a 5-minute speech. Totally extemporaneous. It was a riot. That's some of the funniest speeches about little things. But when I think back at what he taught us about your ability to communicate and how to do that, it was incredibly valuable to me for a long time. Because it taught me about I never write a speech. I just can't read a speech. If I stand up here and write it, I'll just fumble all day long. Certainly we use PowerPoint slides to support the point that we're making. But he taught all of us that you could do that and be effective teachers that are in here, they're not here for the money. I'll tell you that. They can go into the public school system, they can join the teachers union, they can make a lot more money, and nice pensions, and all that kind of stuff. They come here because they really truly love to teach. And they think that a situation, an environment like this is different. I know I went through this with my own two children. The difference in education between an environment like this and the public school system, where I always worried about budgets and all those kind of things, and I'm not saying you aren't here, but it really had more to do with the ratio of teachers to students. When you have a class of 40 kids, you can hide in the back, and if you're not into it that day, that's fine. When I've got 10 around the circular table and the teacher's there, there's nowhere to hide. And you're going to be involved, you're going to learn, you're going to contribute, and you're going to get something from the teacher. It really, really makes a difference. That's one of the values you're getting from private school education. It worked for me, it worked for my kids. It makes a huge, huge difference. So those are some things that I think were really important. One of the things that was said earlier, and I asked you to think about a lot, which I think is not an important thing to learn here, but it's going to really make a difference in the society that we have going forward, are those words of responsibility and accountability. As I've gone around the world, a lot of the difficulties that exist now, like if you look at Europe, what they've built up as a social system, a lot of that's gone. And there's grown an environment of entitlement, and the government's supposed to take care of you and do that. If you learn anything here, take it into the work environment. One of the things that makes you incredibly invaluable to your employer is to have the ability to work hard, impress them, be innovative, and not ever convey the situation that you think you're entitled to, because you're not. Everybody said that it's a real tough world out there, it is. But it's amazing how, if you show them that you have this discipline and commitment and responsibility and accountability, how employers will be drawn to you and will love having you as part of their organization. Because it's the employees that always feel like they're entitled to something, whether as a taxpayer or part of the country not as a taxpayer, but people that are truly accountable and responsible. That's what really will impress an employer and make a huge difference. I'm 55 now. I can't ever imagine retiring because every place that we go, every new plant that I see or whatever is just incredibly fun to me. I love meeting new people, going to different countries. I've gone to 71 different countries so far, and there's some I haven't been to, and I can't wait to get to. If I'm at home for 2 weeks, I can't wait to get out again. My wife gets that. And it's nothing against her, but it's just going out and meeting new people and seeing what's different and what's better and understanding what they're doing. I had 450,000 frequent flyer miles last year. I couldn't even spend them. It's no badge of honor. My back pays for it. But if you get the opportunity to do that and learn more, it's a very, very global world anymore. You cannot just work here and stay with the United States and think that you can be successful in it. It's very much a global world, and it's been struck by our ability to travel, communicate, and meet and see people no matter where you go. What that age thing has done, though, is humbled me in some sense in that because I've been so fortunate, I work because I love to work. And I love the organization that we have, the clients that we have, it's a lot of fun. But it's kind of an interesting thing. I was telling my wife a couple weeks ago that you actually, it's almost like the more you step back and say, I don't need to do this, I'm going to do it, I'm going to be selective about who I work with, who I hire, and all that. You actually can be more successful. You take the stress out of it. And because you convey to people that you're doing this because your heart's in it, not because it's all about the dollar. I actually thought that what would end up with me being able to step back a little bit and work a little less hard. It's actually gone the other direction. Because what happens is people find out that if that's why you're really working, they want even more to work with you because of that. It's been a funny thing. It's really been interesting. I'm happy to do, fortunately, I sit on the 4 board of directors now, including for electronics and potentially a fifth, but it's getting a little bit too much. spend helping other people, that's the best thing that you can do if you have some success of your own, is to try and give back to others. And not by writing a big check, but by spending your time. Because the time is far more valuable than money ever will. So, what I'm going to do is just open it up to any questions that you have. If there's anything that I can answer, I have no clue as to what year all of you are in, or what specifically you're studying. I'd love to hear. That's probably my last point. One thing that I learned early on, and some of your lessons you learn out of books, some of them you learn by doing, some of you learn because you failed miserably and went through a lot of pain because of it. And the lesson that I learned very early on was probably the biggest attribute you can have is one of being a business. And I lost some clients because I didn't listen to what they really wanted and what they were looking for. And there's other experiences like that. But personally, it's probably one of the most important things I've learned, because people respect those that not only listen, but listen sincerely. So if you get their idea, and the first thing you do is repeat it back to them to make sure that you've understood what they told you. And then you can go back and create a proposal or do whatever to make sure that you're responding to what they want. You're hard pressed to find an answer that's more important than that. Very, very, very critical. So there's a lot of other things I can talk about. Again, I welcome any questions that you have and what's on your mind, and we can go and flow there. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. I thought about that because, I was lucky enough because of the minds of my students. So I don't think that I got everything out of this situation or other education opportunities that I did. I probably have learned more from the street than I did from school. But now that I've been out there and had to do, one of the reasons I talked about, for example, written and the oral communication is because even though I had classes like that, I don't feel like I ever took full advantage of it. And so what happened was, over the years, I had to go back, and I actually took some classes in business writing. I took some additional speech classes because I wanted to get better at it. I wanted to understand how to be more effective at it. So I ended up going back, taking classes that I could have taken when I was here. I might have had to show up in the first team later because I would have stayed. And I remember it was probably more so proud when you had to cram all your classes in before noon, so that if you're on the team, you have to be on the first team at 1 o'clock. And you probably give up sometimes. But you have, it's really hard to say that you've got to go a big farther down the road and go, okay, well, what's really going to make a difference for me out there, no matter which direction I go. One of the classes that really made a difference, and I got to devote the time and attention. So I'm not sure there was any one thing in that. It was, I would probably go deeper and farther into more of the classes and opportunities that I saw. So that, because back then, and I don't know how it is today, but you paid tuition once, and it didn't matter if you took 4 classes or 7 classes or whatever. And so I probably did that more than that. So, I mean, we're not okay to feed my family, but I think anybody that is really sincere about it always wants to do better than they did yesterday. So, I mean, I can look back at some accomplishments I feel good about those. I was able to make a difference. But in some cases, you sit back and go, well, I could have done more there. If I had researched that more, studied that more. And you can't have any of those regrets. I think you always have some of it, but you can't take everything. But that would probably be my biggest regret. The book is called Emotional Intelligence, and the author's name is Daniel Goleman, G-O-L-E-M-A-N. And he's actually written a couple books on this topic. It's kind of the one that I picked up about 20 years ago. And as he described it, it really hit home for me because, especially the examples that he uses of certain leaders and whether it was in politics or business or whatever, and their ability to communicate. Everybody talks a lot about Stephen Jobs, but Apple, he just passed away this year. But he's probably a really great example because if we're ever going to return to prominence in business and industry and as a world-leading country, it's doing a lot of the things that he espoused. And a lot of people tell you he was a tyrant toward what he worked for. But it was probably more, I think the people that were as progressive and aggressive as he was didn't have any problem with it. Because most of what he would say and the moves that he got in had to do with the passion that he had for innovation and making sure that he took society from here to a much better place. So everything about that business was innovation. It's really what built this country, and we've lost so much of it. And unfortunately, we've got to get back to that because that'll really make a difference. But when you think of, remember all his infamous speeches where he'd do these product launches, and he'd get out and talk about the iPhone and the iPad and stuff like that. And he would just suck you into what a great concept this was, how it was going to change your whole life. It's a great example of emotional intelligence to me. He had this ability to just take the simplest of ideas and convince you that your whole life is going to be better and different because of that. Now, if he is just an inventor, but he couldn't convince you as to what the virtues of it were, his business would have gone nowhere. But not only was he able to do that, but he bred a whole group of people at that company that became just like him. They couldn't wait to find the next better, newer idea that no one had thought of, and then find a way to sell it to people. And that's where innovation really comes from. And it's going to be critical for us. There's things that disappoint me. For example, I read these articles and they tell students like yourselves, don't go into engineering because all those jobs have already gone to engineering. I'll tell you right now, in our industry, in the automotive industry, the biggest shortage we have is good engineering talent. Can't get them. There's too many teachers are told, well, there's no jobs here. Nothing could be further than the truth, and there's good paying jobs. You go to Alabama or somewhere like that, Michigan State, and electrical engineering degree, you're going to start at 22 with a six-figure salary. Whether it's for our company or any of the other companies out there. Not only that, because of that, a lot of our engineering schools are filled with foreign students, which is fine. But now we have this policy in this country that once those students graduate, they can't stay here because their immigration policy is so screwed up. They can't stay in this country, so then they graduate and they have to go somewhere else in some countries that we compete against because they can't stay here to work. So it's kind of a double thing. So there's a lot of things like that that have to be fixed. But don't listen to that. There's some very, very good jobs out there. Our problem right now in unemployment is not that there are jobs. Many of the requirements of the jobs are going overseas because we can't find the talent here to fill them. It's more of that issue than it is. So our education system is a huge job to not only educate people, but educate the right kinds of backgrounds and disciplines to fill the kind of jobs that we really need in this country. And if we can do that, there's plenty of room for everybody to employ. Don't be scared about it. which is all the more reason that if you develop that talent and you're really good at it, you will stand out even more because there's so many that aren't doing that because of those technologies. So you'll have even a greater advantage if you develop the capability to communicate and do that really well. Because you're right, there's too many that can't do it. And that's I hate to see schools that have migrated to so many of the fluff classes, and I understand a lot of those are very important and can be interesting, but not at the expense of the core classes that are so important. They have skills in the workplace. We shouldn't forget those. That ought to be mandatory for everybody. And oral written communication is near to absolute essentials. Got it. Are you all juniors, seniors, freshmen? What year? You're freshmen. Children are looking at There's my oldest son is 23. He lives in New York City, works for J.P. Morgan. He went to Georgetown University, and they had a club there that was actually a speakers club. They would go every week. They would take turns, and someone in the club had prepared a half-an-hour speech, and they got an opportunity to go up there to give their speech, and then they would go through what was probably the toughest part was almost an hour or so review of the strengths and weaknesses of what you just talked about, how well you did in your own presentation, how you related to the audience, and all that. So it was the toughest class we had in the whole 4 years, but it was just an informal club that they had. But it was a great opportunity for him, and now it's made a huge difference for him. From first grade on and even into college, for Spanish. He's fluent in Spanish. I can't stress to you enough how important it is in this global world of ours to know at least one other language fluently. He's currently he does commodities trading for their Latin American clients. So he's on the phone every day with everything from Panama south. So he deals with, he's had to learn this Portuguese, but for all the other countries in South America, Spanish. It's been a huge advantage to him. He did that job and he promoted within that group within J.P. Morgan because of his Spanish capability. So, what are the best languages? Definitely Spanish. Chinese or Mandarin would be a huge help. German's not bad, but Germany's still kind of what industry you go to. I'm sorry, they're taking French. Not a big music word out there. You got 7 million people in France and probably some people in the east coast of Canada. Beyond that, there's not a lot of use in the business world anyway for French, except when we go to France. It's a big problem. But obviously, if you go into law or into medicine and Latin, huge help. So those are ones that really make a difference. You've got over 1.5 billion people in China. They're a huge force in the town right now, so that'd be a huge advantage if you can speak English. But remember, Spanish is a huge language in this country, certainly in the south, and in the southeast and the southwest. So those are huge advantages. So when I was in school, Latin or any language was just kind of nice to take. I had a couple years here, but it's not enough. If you truly know and speak another language, you have a huge advantage in the workforce, really big advantage. So, yeah.
Your comments about Harbour really resonate with me. I'm really born and raised on Harbour. But you share a couple of comments. One of the characteristics of our leadership is vision. And going back to the comment that you shared coming out of high school, you really didn't know what direction you were going to go. Can you talk about how you kind of sorted that out and maybe share some of those thoughts? Vision, goal setting.
tell you that the family businesses are not always the easiest thing. But the goals that we had early on was to take this business, so there was just 3 or 4 people at the time, to figure out how do we grow it and how do we really differentiate ourselves. So we talked about innovation before. The other key to being successful, whether it's the big company that you work for or the business that you might start, it's just you or you and a couple other people, is to find a way to differentiate yourself. So when we had this opportunity for the government to study all these plans, we said, well, what if we could take that and do that on a regular basis and really expand it to give companies information that they didn't otherwise have. And so what we did was set up a specific plan for how we would take this research that we did and make it a regular thing and try to build a brand around that. Unfortunately, we were able to do that over the years. And that what we did is we collected all this information. So what we find out about companies is that they all want to know about their competitor, but they don't want to tell them anything. Okay. So what we said is, well, there's got to be an opening here. So what if we could be the conduit by which all companies could share information, but they didn't necessarily have to be about anything confidential about themselves. So today we have this massive web-based database. So at the end of the year, like right now, we're in February, all these unknown companies go online to our database and they put in all their information about how their plants performed during 2011. And they put in a lot of information. Much of it is for us to decipher and characterize what the performance was to do this report card. But only certain parts of it are shared with their competitors. So some of the information we get in order to calculate the performance, but we don't share that with their competitors. So we migrate to the point where they have this very high level of confidence in our keeping that data confidential. The other neat thing that we did, we specifically did, is that if we could develop this and make it truly unique and in-depth, we would have no competitors, because once they go through all the work of getting us the data, they're not going to give it to anybody else and go through it all over again. And so it gave us this huge advantage of having no competitors at all, which means you can set your own pricing, so that would be fair, but you can set your own pricing. We had no competitors. And we were able to build a brand and a notoriety within the industry that no one else had. So not only was, as we did more and more of this, was the data confidential, but it became critical to those that run the companies. So today, we still have, every June, we make a presentation of findings to every auto company globally. GM, Ford, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, BMW, Audi, Volkswagen, Peugeot, Renault, Fiat, you name it. And we get about 2 hours in front of their CEO and their top 20 executives. And we were a company of 25 people, and we had that kind of access. We were competing against companies that had 5,000 consultants, and they did a lot of business with Mercedes, but they couldn't get in the door to do nothing. But we had this balance and broad exposure to all these companies, which is why in 2008, they came knocking on the door, they said, you built a brand and a business that's incredibly valuable, and we want to buy it. So it was, it worked out really well for us, but that was the plan. The plan was all about innovation and differentiation. So when you get out there, what you're going to do, you're going to go work for a company or you're going to start your own business. And those are the most important things you have to go after. How can you innovate so that you have something that no one else has that you can sell and control the price of? And how do you differentiate that so that no one else can compete with you? And what that will give you is you'll be able to not only sell your product or your service and make a profit on it, but that you can make a difference in the world. I would say this in all humility that what my father built and what we were able to do, it brought information and knowledge to companies and allowed them to improve far beyond what they were thought capable. And we worked with them to make those improvements and made them better. We worked very closely with the Obama administration 3 years ago through GM and the Chrysler bankruptcy. And I remember telling them when they first started down the road, before they were going to go look at GM, they were coming to Detroit, all this high power Washington guys. I said, this isn't your typical turnaround. When you go to General Motors, you're not going to find bad plants. You're not going to find smoke belching factories that don't have low quality. There's some other issues here on labor agreements and some other stuff, banking situations that have caused this bankruptcy, but it has nothing to do with bad factories. And they looked at me and said, yeah, right. about everybody else inside of Detroit is that these guys couldn't get out of the channel. I remember months later, this guy named Ratner who ran the turnaround for the U.S. government to work for Obama. And he came back to me and he said, you were right. We went to the plants that GM had, that Chrysler had, and they were as good as any of the ones we saw from Japan or Germany or whatever. That wasn't the problem. And I told my father at the time, I said, we weren't the only ones, but we provide a motivation and initiative that helped those plants improve over the last 20, 25 years. And you should be proud of them. They should be. We weren't the only ones. But like I said, any of the money aside, you want a job where you go home at the end of the day and say, it really made a difference. I saved somebody's job, I helped somebody grow, or I kept jobs, which has really been my biggest push in the last years of my career. Is that jobs don't have to leave America. And it's an interesting thing because we've actually seen a trend in the last 5 years of all those jobs that went to China and other places. Many of them are coming back because this is actually a better place to produce. Wages that were $1 an hour in China several years ago are now $9, $10 an hour on the east coast of China because there's so much demand for that here. So now when you add in all the freight and the time that it takes to bring something from there to here, it's actually less expensive to build here. There's a company in the auto industry that builds the same car at 2 different plants. One plant in Detroit, one plant in Mexico. Which one do you think costs less? Well, most people think. There's about a $500 labor cost difference by the time we ship all the cars from Mexico, they ship the cars back, and 95% of them are sold here, not in Mexico. It actually costs more to build in Mexico than it does here. So don't believe all the crap that you read in the newspaper, what people tell you. Dig deeper and find out what the real answer is. Because when we did those studies, I was just as astonished as you might be. And we found out that it was actually, and the better the plant got in Detroit, the bigger that cost got. It's changed a lot of things. Anybody else? Probably anxious to go home and watch all the free games. I'm amazed y'all came out today, so it's a pretty good thing. We're going to do a little party of our own today. I'm anxious to have my father come over. This is his first weekend in 60 years being a single man. And so, it kind of changes everything. But I was reminding him the other day about some of the things that I shared with you today. And so, you move on to other parts of life, but I told him, sad as you might be on this side, you can feel really proud about what you contributed and what you've done in your business and your personal life on the other side. So, I remember sitting in church Monday, and there's a couple of my cousins have young kids, and under a year old, and they're screaming in the back. It reminds you of the whole circle of life. Some people go, and some people come. And the most important part of that is for those that left, did we learn all the things that we should have learned from them and make our own lives better, and then pass those on to all those little kids that are going to be so dependent on us to make this world better than it